In terms of the kind of overall goals, from our side, it's important to create I think it's a sustainable community, and that operates on many levels. I think it's from the people there who are going to move into the apartments that relate to the kind of town centre of Musselburgh. But I think in terms of the kind of design as well, I think it's important that the building has a relevance to the site and fits into Musselburgh in the character, and it's not like a kind of an alien spaceship that's landed on the site. And I think kind of moving forwards, the whole emphasis on sustainability, kind of town living, city living, and that kind of carbon neutral will be more prevalent. It will offer what, in some ways, quite a mixed lifestyle, and mixed by meaning that I think it will appeal to all sorts of different people, which is important in terms of the kind of sustainability of the development and the kind of future of Musselburgh. And it'll appeal to, from our side, you creating a development which will cater for the first-time buyer, the young family, the professional, and also retirees as well, and kind of affordable accommodation for people who need help on the kind of housing ladder. And I think that's kind of really important to have this kind of holistic approach to lifestyle and living, and it creates more sustainable communities, and you're not creating ghettos. And I think with it, for the lifestyle, it's important that the people of the development are using all the facilities in Musselburgh as well. And I think by creating kind of town centre, city centre developments, it offers all these opportunities rather kind of moving to the kind of anonymous housing estates on the periphery of Edinburgh. Good design covers quite a wide spectrum from my side, and I think it's got to have a relevance, it's got to have a sustainability, it's got to have a kind of a placemaking agenda, but it's got to have a longevity as well. I think creating design, good design, which isn't fashionable design, just good, honest design, well detailed, is important for the durability and longevity of the development. And I think kind of good design which is catering for the needs of people, so the accommodation is flexible. And I think the tenure of residential mix from ones, twos, threes, larger flats and kind of affordable accommodation means it can cater for a variety of people, for kind of like a truly kind of, I think, kind of mixed community, sustainable community within the kind of town centre of Musselburgh, which is kind of really, really important. I think the good design as well, when I say kind of it's centred on placemaking and has its kind of identity, is important as well. So we've got good kind of areas for kind of communal recreation, which will foster kind of areas for social interaction. And I think the design itself has a relevance, a historical relevance to the kind of former Wireworks on the site, and a relevance and a relationship to kind of Mall Avenue and the river as well. I think key with the Wireworks in terms of kind of good design is, the form has a relevance to the history, the bricks has a relevance to the history of the site, and I think the relationship of the kind of communal areas which actually structures all the apartments, then the communal kind of green areas, the courtyard, relates to the kind of Mall Avenue itself, the wonderful Treeland Avenue and the river. So it has this kind of focus and relationship and an acknowledgement of Musselburgh and the kind of and the kind of town centre. Yeah, the site itself, when you wind the kind of clock way back, you had the kind of old kind of wind of Musselburgh kind of running through the town centre with this kind of local vernacular. And so the site itself at one stage would have literally, I think it was pasture lands, orchards and that kind of thing. And then kind of 1800s to kind of, I think it was 1980s, it was kind of predominantly, a Wireworks and an industrial setting. That kind of whole area of the kind of business park nearby. And then the Wireworks itself, it's so kind of its expansion, I think between the world wars and the kind of success of the aeroplane, so making wire for aeroplanes and stuff. And I think when you see that, it's kind of a phenomenal kind of site history. And as a designer, some of that kind of history has to be relevant and encapsulating the design moving forwards. I think historically the reference is to the built form of the kind of Victorian sheds of the Wireworks in terms of kind of the narrow plan forms, the pitched roofs and the kind of roof articulation. Materiality as well. I think the whole area, I mean, as a kind of little unknown fact, I mean, Scotland used to have a lot of kind of brick manufacture through the Central Belt. And I think the kind of site itself was kind of Victorian buildings, of brick buildings with pitched roofs. And I think the relevance is we've related the architecture to pick up on these features. So the buildings are predominantly brick with some metalwork, and we've got the pitched roofs and featureful gables harking back to the kind of industrial kind of roof forms that you would have in the kind of Wireworks or kind of Victorian architecture of its time. And I think, how does it kind of reflect to its location? I think it's the accessibility from the kind of central kind of wonderful courtyard, this kind of green oasis, which relates to kind of Mall Avenue, the wonderful tree line kind of by the road, and then access to the river. So it has a sense of setting, but a sense of openness that people can use the development as well. I think it benefits Musselburgh on numerous levels. I think on one level, you're creating much needed residential accommodation to cater for a variety of people, from the first time buyer, you know, as you said, you know, the young professional, the young family, to the retiree. So that's got to be good for kind of social inclusion, and it's got to be good, I think, for sustainable communities. By having people in the town centre, you're cutting down on and kind of carbon of travel. But also, I think, as a huge benefit to Musselburgh is these people will use the local facilities. You know, from the retail experience, from the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, to the recreation side of it as well. And that's important for the survival of town centres like Musselburgh. And it's also important for sustainability as well, you know, so that you're creating developments which use brownfield sites, and you're not kind of using kind of greenfield sites on the periphery of kind of town and city centres. I think the main challenge is, it's not so much challenges as such, it's just as the design evolves and as you're going forward, you naturally have the interaction with planning. And I think one of the things that we'd found with kind of going through the planning is, from their side, they perceive the development should have a more vernacular feel to it, with the use of harling or render. But on kind of persuading the planners to use the brick by the kind of convincing story of the industrial heritage of the site, the materiality. And that was more of a kind of, you know, almost understanding the history of the site to inform the design, which ultimately went down well with planning. And that was kind of great. I think other than that, the challenge is always to create, with placemaking, is meaningful space, you know, for residents and the kind of people to use. And we've done that by creating this wonderful kind of courtyard or green oasis, which I think will work kind of really well. I think as a practice for us, it's design, it operates on a number of levels. And I think, you know, we've got placemaking is at the centre of our hearts. And I think that's kind of crucial for a site of this nature, as we've just describing this creation of this kind of central courtyard that the development looks into is really, really important. And to create this kind of feel and the materiality which has a relevance to history and a relevance to things going forward is important as well. You know, and you're not just kind of, I think residential design gets kind of targeted as almost the potato cutter, as a stamp that goes down. But as a practice, we don't do that. So every project is kind of approached on its own unique merits. And also, professionally, we've got to respect our clients, you know, Dundas's brief, budgets, etc. And where we exceed is we can combine our design skills to almost merge all these together and create a successful design. And I think from our side as well, it's a company like Dundas having the belief and trying to create something different, which is important. I mean, we kind of got the project as a small design competition. And if I looked at it now, and as the original competition, on the whole, it has all the same kind of design ethos and merits. Nothing's been eroded during the process, which is kind of heartening to see, and it shows belief from Dundas in us and the project as well. I think overall it'll be exciting to see it kind of, you know, we've come through COVID and various problems. I think we're just really looking forward to seeing it come out of the ground, and we're looking forward to kind of working with the kind of Dundas team to get the project built. And ultimately it'll be, what is usually gratifying for us is to go back to a design 2 or 3 years later and see people, you know, and hearing that kind of first laugh of a child playing in the courtyard, or someone coming home at night, and having their design having life and vitality about it, and not creating that ghetto. And I think it'll be a really successful development.